Listen, the press conferences yesterday, look at Jimmy Butler does a little Randy Moss action there with Bam Adebayo is answering questions for the media. Let's just say he's distracting him as he was trying to. You see Bam look over like, come on, bro.
Right, yeah.
Come on, bro.
Team chemistry might be too good.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it nighttime because the moon was out?
Yeah. They're having a little fun with one another. That was going on there. Welcome to Get Up, brought to you live, of course, here at the Seaport, and brought to you by Patron. Perfection starts with Patron. CJ McCollum's here, Alan Hahn is here, and guys, we got Zach Lowe as well. And you know what? We got to start on the court because tonight it's huge. Game 3, NBA Finals. It tips off in Miami. You got two teams who last played on Sunday where Nikola Jokic dropped that 41 points, but it wasn't enough as Miami outscored Denver by 11 in the fourth quarter to win by 3. Now, the Nuggets, they hit on the road, and on the postseason, they're just 4-3 compared to 9-1 at home. And they've struggled defensively, allowing 10 more points per game on the road. But Denver, well, they can win tonight. History says they'll be in control of the series all time because the Game 3 winner of a 1-1 final series goes on to win 80% of the time. All right, so Game 3 tonight. And Alan, in your opinion, which team needs it more? Is it the Nuggets? Is it the Heat?
Well, it's the Denver Nuggets. This is like a virtual must-win for them, in my opinion, just from watching the first two games and also seeing how things have played out since. Because when your head coach is at the podium calling out your effort, there's not much more he can do at that point. What's he going to say if you lose another game? You get to a point where he chooses that moment to call his team out publicly. You don't normally see that anymore in professional sports. So he does that at the highest level. He's sending a message. It's a wake-up call to his team. And then after that, they have a video sesh. They go through some mistakes and obvious ones. I mean, when you think about the open threes that they are giving up in this series, the average is 6.5 feet of a defender on these three-point shots that Miami's making. That's embarrassing. There was one shot where Strus made it was at 18 feet away. It was the closest defender. You know, the court is 50 feet wide, right? Like a third of the court was left wide open for a guy to take a three. We got problems in Denver, and they've got to figure it out. Because if you lose this game, remember how you were complaining about nobody's talking about you? Everybody's talking about you now because you are supposed to win. You're the better team, quote unquote. You lose this team, he'll be talking about you, but it won't be the way you want them to.
And I think teams have found out, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, this is a team you do not want to give life. And you lose this game and Miami takes control, oh boy, it'd be something. Who do you think needs this win more tonight?
I think Denver absolutely needs this win more tonight. They were 8-point favorites in games 1 and 2. They lost the game at home in which they were up 15 points. They lost the game in which Jimmy didn't play his best basketball. He had a great all-around game. He passed the ball well. He defended well, but he didn't have his spectacular moment. They lost the game where, like you said before, guys are getting wide open threes. Strus, the best shooter on the Miami Heat's team, Duncan Robinson, wide open. Bam walking into 8-foot pull-up jumpers.
Yeah.
The sense of urgency wasn't there, and I think Mike Malone wants it to be there tonight because he understands that with a Spo-led team, if you give them an advantage and you give them a lead, they're not going to look back, and they're great at executing in the fourth quarter. They are great at mixing up their defenses, mixing up their coverages, and that Miami nightlife is also undefeated.
Liv, huh? You talking about that other Liv we talked about there in Miami.
The one that cost you.
Yes. Zach, what do you think? Who needs this win more tonight?
The answer should be Miami, because if they lose, home court flips right back to Denver. All the work they did winning Game 2 is undone. But I also think it's the Nuggets, because these series sometimes have a way of snowballing. You give the Heat a lead, you give them life, you give them confidence, they start to get mean, they start to get nasty. Meanwhile, you've already wobbled internally a little bit. You had 6 or 7 breakdowns the Denver Nuggets did. That would have been bad regular season breakdowns, bad like October, November breakdowns on defense in Game 2. Then you had a film session that was probably a little bit ugly. You had Michael Malone on the podium calling you out. If you lose tonight, then all of a sudden it starts to feel a little uncomfortable, and it feels real comfortable on the other side. And I'm not saying Denver can't dig out of it. If they lose tonight, they can still win the series because they're a tough, strong, really good team. But sometimes these things start to snowball a little bit out of your control. And I think if they lost tonight, depending on the manner of that loss, that could be the case here. So I'm going to go Denver needs to right the ship stat.
CJ, the Nuggets are 0-3 when Jokic has scored 40 or more in the postseason. Did the Heat find a little something here when you look at game 2? Say, hey, look, let Jokic score 40 or whatever, but we'll still win games.
I don't like the term let because this is a man who gets what he wants. Offensively, he can do everything. He can post up. He can make the right pass, make the right decision. He can impact and beat you scoring or passing. This was a case of them figuring out how to contain the other players. Put Jimmy Butler on Jamal Murray. Put Bam on Joker, run more matchup zones, mix in a 2-2-1 back into a zone, mix in a bit of a triangle and 2, if you will, where they're zoning on the backside, but kind of man on the 2 best players. Spo is continuing to figure out ways to try to make the game uncomfortable for everyone else. He's trying to make it uncomfortable for Joker, but he's never rattled, he's never sped up. The difference in this game is going to be their ability to adjust and adapt and to get their three-point shooters quality looks and to play defense a little bit better so that Gabe Vincent isn't walking in the three-pointer.
Alan, why is Denver losing all the time when Joker has big nights scoring the basketball?
Well, you saw it on that graphic, the 0-3 graphic. Below it, it gave a great stat, which is how many points they're giving up in those games. There it is right there, 118 opponent points per game in those games. That's unacceptable. Their defense in 2 of the 3 games, their 2 worst defensive ratings in the playoffs when he scored 40. So he's scoring 40, but they're also not defending in those games. Is this coincidence, or is there something about the role players, like you mentioned, the other guys aren't getting the ball as much because he's doing all the scoring? Do they sort of get lost? Because guys like to score. I mean, guys like to see their shots go in, and suddenly it's amazing. You become better defensive players when your shots are going in. He's averaging, up until through game 1, he's averaging 82 passes a game in the playoffs. It's by far the most of any player in the playoffs this year on average. He only had 66 passes in game 2. So they were taking away his ability to be a passer, making him more of a shooter and scorer. That's got to change. How they do it will be interesting, but it's really going to be up to the supporting cast players to stay engaged.
Zach Lowe, what are you seeing?
Yeah, the idea that they're letting Jokic score or they're happy to let him score to get his points is sort of contradicted by the fact that their number 1 goal on defense is stop him from getting the ball. Bam has been incredible fronting the post, denying entry passes. They're making it hard for him to get the ball in the first place, which is why he's just dribbling down the court into his post-ups because that's the easiest way for him to get him the ball. What they are doing really well is A, taking away the easiest passes, the best passes. They're being very careful with their help. They're helping a little, but not too much. And B, mixing up defenses so often that the Nuggets just can't get comfortable. They can't get a rhythm. They don't know. Are they going to be fronting? Are they going to double this time? Because sometimes they are double teaming them. Are they going to half double? Are they going to play zone? What are they going to do? And it's hard for everyone else to get in a rhythm. And you see this sort of paralysis take over where the role players are just standing around. The Nuggets need to get their life back, their zip back. And I think they'll come out and play a better game tonight.
On the other side, you have the Miami Heat, who right now the best three-point shooting team in the postseason. CJ, is it as simple as the outcome of this game comes down to three-point shooting for the Miami Heat?
Make or miss.
That will help. It's a make or miss league, and that will help. That was essentially the only difference in game 1. I think Strus went 0 for 9. I think Caleb Martin didn't shoot the ball well, and they still had a chance to win game 1. So if they make shots, that helps. But I think the other thing that we're not talking about here is the fact that Jamal Murray only had, 16 points in game 2? Mm-hmm. Jimmy Butler did a tremendous job of guarding him, making it difficult on him. And he put a point of emphasis on making sure that his shooters got touches early and were comfortable. People are talking about how many points Jimmy scores each night. He's making sure his guys get touches. And I look for Joker to have a similar mentality tonight, understanding that he can go get 18 in the third quarter again if he needs to. But if MPJ, KCP, you call him the alphabet guy, yeah. If they're not getting touches and involved early, they're in trouble because defensively, it's not the same type of effort that we're seeing from them when they're not getting shots.
Is it just as simple as Miami making threes?
CJ, as a player, does it bother you when we boil it down to almost that simplicity, where it's a make or miss league? And look at the numbers: 41% from 3, they win in the playoffs. 35%, they lose these games. Miami has lived with that three-point shot, which is kind of out of character because during the regular season, they were the 3rd worst three-point shooting team in the league.
Now the postseason,
but
they're
in the postseason, this has been a weapon of theirs. But I hate doing that to this game. Yeah. This game is too hard to say, well, they just made their threes, that's why they won.
It's not fair to just talk about the three-point shooting because we're not talking about the fact that the Miami Heat made real adjustments. They started Kevin Love. Kevin Love gets 10 rebounds, creates an opportunity where Joker has to rotate out and actually close out on him because he has shot credibility. They go more matchup zone. They mix in almost essentially zone on makes, man on misses, but it's a rotating man on misses where there's extra help. Jimmy's roaming. He's fighting over screens. They're doing the late blacks, as we call them, which is a late switch. This was a well thought out and executed game plan where Spo looked at the game, looked at the film, talked to his team and said, okay, I'm not going to wait. I'm making my adjustments now. I might have gave this guy a DNP for half a season. Duncan
Did not
Robinson.
play, by the way.
I might have gave this guy a DNP for a series and a half. Kevin Love hasn't played since the last series, but this is a culture where guys are always ready, they're always professional, and they always do their job. And that's why I like the Heat in this series because no matter what, they're going to play hard, they're going to compete, they have experience, and we're talking about the fact that they've hit a light switch where they're making threes without Tyler Hero, by the way, who's a 40% three-point shooter and averages 20 points per game. So I think that speaks to the fact that this Miami Heat team is for real, and we've doubted them over and over and over again and been surprised every time they win. I think now they're showing that they're serious.
Zach Lowe, put a bow on this.
It's not just about the threes, it's about the kinds of threes. Look, you can't give them open threes off of one action. If you mess up their first action, that can't happen. There's a difference between that. If they run 5, 6, 7 different things on one possession, and on thing number 6, you mess up, that happens. They've got to